What's going on, you guys? It is your boy Matt Talks Films, and I am back with another video, and I'm back with another review. And this time around, I am talking about the newest horror film of 2026. I am talking about Lee Cronin's The Mummy. Now, it is very safe for me to say this, in contrast to last week's video, which, in case you didn't see, it was the drama review starring Zendaya and Robert Pattinson. I really like that film quite a bit. I raved and ranted about it. This film I'm talking about here today, Lee Cronin's The Mummy, was one of the worst movies I've seen in theaters in a while, especially in its own genre of horror. I hated this movie. I hated it. Now, I don't want to spill all the beans that I want to spill right now in the intro. So if you want to hear my full thoughts and opinions about Lee Cronin's The Mummy, leave a like, comment, share, and subscribe right here, right now at Matt Talks Films. And follow me everywhere at Matt Talks Films, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter for more short form content like this. Now, let's get into it. Lee Cronin's The Mummy. Pure dog shit slop. Pure slop. It is crazy because Lee Cronin directed Evil Dead Rise, which was actually a fun film for me. I thought it was very fun movie to watch. I've rewatched it since it came out in theaters, and it was a really fun theater experience. A lot of good body horror, and I thought that was a really good addition to the Evil Dead franchise. He also directed The Hole in the Ground, which is a film I haven't seen, but I know a lot of people like it or they just hate it. And now he releases The Mummy, which is a remake slash not a remake. It's a reimagining, and this movie is dreadful. Pure dreadful. It's funny. I'm a big film guy. Clearly, I have a YouTube film review account. I do film content. I love going to the theaters. I really do. And I will never stop going to the theaters. But man, oh man, this movie really made me rethink things. It's like, hey, Matt, instead of going to see Lee Cronin The Mummy like you did tonight, you could have maybe went to the bar like you never do and maybe found the love of your life. Maybe even talked to a woman like you haven't done in a while. Or maybe you figure out your future. But instead you went to go see Lee Cronin's The Mummy because you love movies so much and you wanted to escape for a little bit after a long week of hard work. Instead, I had to sit through 2 hours plus of The Mummy. Not The Mummy, but Lee Cronin's The Mummy. It is so funny to me, by the way. I'm walking out of the theater. Movie ends. I'm the first one out of the theater. That's how much I hated this movie. As soon as the credits hit, I got up out my seat and just ran towards the exit, ran towards my car because I need to get home and talk about this film ASAP before it leaves my mind. As I'm walking out of the theater, I see some kid in his tux. I don't know if it's prom season for high school. I'm pretty sure it's not. But nonetheless, he's talking to his prom date or the date he brought to the movie. And he's like, when you imagine The Mummy, do you imagine a 2-hour movie? And I was like, whoa, look at the media literacy at the young adults or the young teenagers nowadays. I completely agree. This movie felt like an eternity. There's a character in this movie that is locked in a coffin for 8 years. This movie felt like 8 years or longer. So I kind of know what that character feels like. This movie was dog shit. Pure dog shit. This movie reminded me a lot of a horror movie that came out recently. It was, I believe, written and produced by Danny McBride. I forget the exact title, so you're catching me looking it up right now. And to be honest with you, it was one of the worst movies of the 2020s. It was an addition to a franchise that a lot of people love the first and third film. The Exorcist Believer, directed by David Gordon Green, and I think it's written by Danny McBride and David Gordon Green. One of the worst movies, one of the worst horror movies you will see. Lee Cronin's The Mummy felt on par with The Exorcist Believer. Maybe not as bad as The Exorcist Believer, but man, on par. And probably worse at times. Now, listen, I would rather watch The Exorcist Believer because sometimes bad horror movies thrive quite a bit and they make you laugh. And that movie made me laugh a lot. To be quite honest with you guys, one of my favorite movie theater experiences of the 2020s. I went to go see it with my mom, who's a big fan of the first Exorcist movie, and we pretty much just laughed through the entirety of Exorcist the Believer, whatever the fuck that movie's called. This movie, Lee Cronin's The Mummy, made me want to pull my hair out. Or, not to be too crass, not to be too dramatic, put a gun in my mouth. I really felt that quite a bit watching Lee Cronin's The Mummy, especially when it has a 2 hour and 13-minute runtime. Why is this movie 2 hours and 13 minutes? Now, I don't want to get too carried away here. And honestly, I think this movie made me realize how dramatic I can be with bad movies. But to be quite honest with you guys, talking about bad movies sometimes is better than talking about great movies. Where do I even begin? Let me tell you what Lee Cronin's The Mummy is about. So basically, the young daughter of a journalist disappears into the desert without a trace. She was the daughter of a journalist in Cairo, Egypt. He was there for about 5 months. They were about to move back to New York. He just landed a big job. But then she gets kidnapped. She disappears. And then we fast forward to 8 years. They're in Albuquerque. Their new daughter is born. Their son is all grown up. And then they get a call that their daughter has been found. And not only has she been found, but she was found in a coffin and she is alive. Now, she's not the daughter that you once knew. She is clearly traumatized. And not only is she traumatized, she is something entirely different. And that's what this movie is about. And holy crap, is it stupid. Now, there's another word I want to use for this movie. Starts with an R, ends with a D. Can't use that word anymore. But god damn it, I'm thinking about that word when I say stupid and how stupid this movie is. Where do I begin about how stupid this movie is? First and foremost, sometimes the really bad movies give you a clue on when it's going to be a bad movie to start. Because there's a line that starts this movie that really gives you a great foreshadowing of what this movie is going to be for the audience. Because one of the first lines of this movie is, "Oh my god, you are giving me a headache," or something along those lines. This movie gave me a gigantic headache that I had on the entire way home, all the way up until I set up my equipment at home to talk about this movie with you guys. My head was banging. There's a scene in this movie where a character is banging his head against his bed frame. I kind of envied him because I'm sitting in this movie theater auditorium. I have nothing to bang my head against, but god damn it, I wanted to bang my head against something because this movie was infuriating, it was head aching, and it was just atrociously egregious. It was atrociously egregious. Where do we start? First and foremost, this movie feels like a ripoff of The Exorcist at times. It just does. With some of the lines of dialogue that the younger actress is asked to say, it's very reminiscent of The Exorcist, the original film, except is not nearly executed as good as the original Exorcist was executed. We have to talk about the performances here, because everybody in this movie was bad. Outside of a couple good body performances from the character of, I believe, Katie Cannon, there's really some good moments where she displays some really good body horror moments and some really interesting physical moments of her performance. But when we're talking about the delivery of some lines of dialogue, every character in this movie straight up misses. No one gives a good performance. Now, is that on the actors in this movie? Most likely, but it's definitely on the filmmaker, Lee Cronin, to not get a better performance out of some of these actors, because man, there are some scenes in this movie where I'm like, you couldn't do another take? Specifically, Jack Rayner. I hope I'm pronouncing his name right. He was in Midsommar, Sing Street, the Transformers movie, Detroit. He is the father of the girl that goes missing. And after she goes missing, him and his wife are put into an interrogation room in Cairo, Egypt. And the main officer at this police station is accusing him of possibly having something to do with his daughter going missing. And Jack Rayner, even though his native language isn't Egyptian, he's like, "Hey, I know what you're saying. You think I have something to do with this?" And he stands up, and he's supposed to be really angry, like anyone would be when their daughter goes missing and they're somehow accused of having something to do with it. Except there's no conviction, there's no confidence, and the lines of dialogue that he's asked to deliver, he delivers it horribly. So I really think Jack Rayner gives one of the worst performances of the year so far, and we're only in April. He was void of the emotion that he needed to give and portray. He wasn't convincing. It wasn't a confident performance. And maybe that's due to his capabilities, or maybe that's due to how bad the screenplay is. I think the screenplay is really, really bad in several different spots. And I'm going to try to point that out as I continue to go throughout this video. But to be quite honest with you guys, this movie is so bad and so infuriating to me that it's quickly leaving my mind. I'm sure there's a lot of people that understand what I'm saying there, because once you see a bad movie, especially really bad movies, you tend to want to get rid of whatever that movie was, because that's how I feel about this movie. Like, it's not even, like, I hate to be this rude and honestly this condescending or this just mean. All the other actors in this movie aren't even worth naming, because they give really, 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 really bad performances. Laia Costa, Natalie Grace, Shiloh Molina, Billy Roy. Honestly, Billy Roy might have been the best performance here. She plays Maud. That's about it. Veronica Falcon. Everybody, Emily Mitchell, everybody just gives a really bad performance that is completely void of a lot of the key emotions that they were asked to deliver. I mean, it was baffling to watch how bad these performances were. It's either they didn't give a shit, they didn't care, they didn't understand what they were supposed to convey and portray, or they just knew that the screenplay was bad, which maybe it's all three. Who knows? Just really, really bad. Let's talk about the horror in this movie. I'm a horror guy. I even like bad horror movies. Yes, this is a bad movie, but it's not a fun, bad horror movie. Despite it having some really good body horror elements. That's the best compliment I can give this movie. The body horror in this movie is really good at times. And the premise is interesting on its surface. So if I had to give this movie 2 compliments, it would be it has good body horror. Some of the body horror in this movie made my skin crawl. The second compliment I would give this movie would be the premise is interesting on the surface and only for about 10 to 15 minutes. Because I'll be honest, heading into this movie, I thought the trailer was really interesting and really fun and showed promise. But man, oh man, the trailer is a million times better than the movie and the final product that we get. That's without a doubt. Hate to say it, hate to break it to you guys. If you were planning on going to see Lee Cronin's The Mummy, don't. Because you're going to regret it. But if you enjoyed it, shout out to you. Shout out to you. I wish I went to this movie and enjoyed it. There is nothing more I want than at the end of my work week, at the end of my week, to go to the movie theaters and escape and feel something fun. If not great or good. If it's not going to be a good movie or a great movie, at least make it fun. And this movie's not fun. Especially since it overstays its welcome. I repeat, this movie is 2 hours and 13 minutes long. It felt like 8 years. It felt like 8 years, bro. Oh man, I hated this. But that's the only 2 compliments I give this movie. The body horror is really good at times, and the premise is interesting on its surface. We have to talk about some of the stupidity of these characters in this movie, because every character felt stupid and void of logic, maybe except for Charlie Cannon's character, because he was the only one kind of honed in on trying to solve the problem. Maybe Detective Dahlia too, who was a detective in Egypt. But everyone else was just stupid and stupid and stupid. There is a scene/sequence in this movie. Let me paint the picture. So the daughter is found to be alive in Egypt. So they go back home to America, to Albuquerque, New Mexico. First of all, when you first see the daughter, you just could tell, like, it's not that she's just traumatized. It's something else is going on with her, right? It's not like she's just traumatized, has been away from sunlight for about 8 years. She is demonic. And there's just no way, even though you've been missing your daughter for 8 years, that you would bring her back home. First and foremost, how did you get her on the plane? And how did she not cause a scene on the plane on the way back home? That's another thing. We don't get to see that, which I'm not asking to see it, but goddamn it, the way she acts before and after makes you like kind of wonder how the hell she got on the plane and didn't have a hissy fit or a demonic eruption. But that's besides the point. Later into the film, they live in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and Larissa's mom lives with them. She's a very religious grandmother. She seems like a really good grandmother. She's great with the other two kids. But anyway, Katie comes back home, and later in the movie, she comes back home, and one of the first eruptions we see from Katie is when Larissa's mom, aka the grandmother to Katie, starts to say a prayer for her. And then she gets headbutted. That's the first major incident we see in the movie with Katie and the grandmother. And then later in the film, Larissa and Charlie leave the grandmother with Katie. And Katie is still incoherent, has weird flare ups where she runs around the house and eats scorpions and does some weird shit, crawls around and whatever, whatnot. And the grandma starts to say a prayer for Katie. And she starts to say a prayer for Katie. And we get a second flare up, which leads to the death of the grandmother. And it is a gruesome one. She throws her out the window, and she comes crashing down on Charlie's car while the kids are in it. And not only that, she gets eaten by coyotes in the daytime, which for some reason coyotes are a big part of this movie. And by the way, there's an egregiously bad coyote scene in this movie before the eating scene with the grandmother, where it's just terrible CGI. It was horrible to look at. My eyes immediately started to get sore. But the death of the grandmother isn't even the worst part of this movie. By the way, that scene is funny because after she throws the grandmother out of the window, she goes right back to her bed and like tucks herself in, and then Larissa comes in the room, and it's just really funny visual. But nonetheless, the next day, or we don't know, maybe it's 2 days removed from the incident, they have the funeral at the house. So not only do they think that their daughter just killed Larissa's mom and the kid's grandmother, they have the funeral at the house where the grandmother died and where their psychotic daughter, demonic daughter, is locked up upstairs with a rotting floor. What the fuck kind of logic is that? It's insanity. Why even have the funeral? Why even invite people over? There's clearly something going on with your family that's not right. Don't have a funeral. Or if you have a funeral, fucking go away and have it at a funeral home, not at your house. Because what happens is Katie crawls through her floor upstairs, downstairs to the funeral. The other daughter is now possessed by Katie because Katie licked her toes through the door, which is another egregious scene, and I can't believe I even said that sentence out loud. And so is the brother is possessed as well. So we get to see Katie crawl through the floorboards downstairs to the funeral and climb onto the grandma, which later makes the grandma come back to life demonically. We also see Maud, who gives the best performance of this movie, take the dentures out of the grandma's mouth after she pulls out all of her teeth, and she bites a random priest or a guy. It is chaotic and it lacks logic. And it's not even like fun. It's weird. And it's like void of logic. And bro, why would you have the funeral at the house except for the reason you just want something crazy to happen? Because that just seems like lazy screenwriting to me. And listen, I'm not one to give notes and opinions about screenwriting because, listen, I try to screenwrite every day, and hopefully something happens there with me one day, but I think the average eye and the average moviegoer would say that is some of the most idiotic things. I think the average moviegoer would say that's one of the most idiotic things they've ever seen in a movie this year. Why would you have a funeral at the house when you know your daughter's psychotic and demonic? And by the way, you can't tell anyone that your daughter has returned mysteriously after 8 years. What the fuck is going on? That blew my mind. And I couldn't believe that was in the movie. This movie's a mess. It's a mess. MESS. This movie's a fucking mess. And honestly, I found it quite pretentious that Lee Cronin put his name in the title of this movie. Lee Cronin's The Mummy. I kind of wanted to fight Lee Cronin after this movie for making this movie 2 hours and 13 minutes and making it this stupid and horrible. Maybe that's too mean, but this movie is horrible, and I don't even think it's really in a fun way. Because if you make a bad horror movie, kudos. Especially if you make it fun. Because listen, you don't have to make a great movie to make it rewatchable. You can make a bad movie and make it fun, and I'll rewatch, I'll revisit it, and I'll say I had a great time at the theaters. This is not the case at all. This movie is just a bad time, and it really overstays its welcome. Now, let's talk about how this movie wraps up. Spoilers. I already spoiled this movie, but if you're watching this video, you probably already saw this movie. And honestly, I don't think a lot of people are going to watch this video because probably not a lot of people want to go see this movie this weekend. But let's talk about how this movie is resolved. So, why was Katie kidnapped? And why was she mummified? There's this magician that's been grooming Katie slowly and surely through her daughter. And then all of a sudden one day the magician comes by and she gives Katie a candy bar and then gives her an apple, which leads to Katie being subdued and being kidnapped and taken away. Katie wakes up in a basement with a bunch of people around her. We see this all on video later in the film. The magician, the reason why she is doing this is because she wants to protect her family. It's a tradition. This is now the 82nd person that's been mummified, and it's to protect her family from this demon. And a child's body is better because a child's body lasts longer, but any living human can do. But she chose a child because it can last longer, and it can preserve her family for a hell of a lot longer. Now, how do we know this? We don't get shown this. We literally get told this by the magician, because for some reason she filmed this whole thing, and not only did she film this whole experience, she gave a monologue before she did it. Not in the same room as Katie and everyone else. She sat down and gave a monologue for some reason. And for some reason she recorded this event. Why would she record this event? But anyway, that's the reason. So Katie was a victim because the magician wanted to preserve her family, and she didn't want her family to be possessed by a demon. And the reason why she chose Katie, a child, because the demon would stay in that body longer. So that's why Katie was kidnapped and possessed. So what happens at the end of this movie? We get this big CGI dog shit fight between the possessed people, which are Maud, Katie, the dead grandma, and the brother. And then we get the fight between the detective from Egypt who comes to Albuquerque, New Mexico. And then we get Larissa and Charlie. So it's Larissa, Charlie, the detective Dahlia versus Katie, Sebastian, and Maud, and the dead grandma. That's the big CGI battle we get at the end. And then also, we figure out a way to get this demon out of Katie's body, which is you have to say this sort of spell to get it out of their body and transfer it to another person. So what do? We get a fatherly sacrifice at the end, which leads to Katie transferring the demon to her father, Charlie. And the spell was said by Dahlia because she remembers it. And there's an interesting scene, I guess, where she originally got a scorpion shoved down her throat. The scorpion cut a hole in her throat. She evades all that, subdues the grandma, and then she goes upstairs, says the spell, but she has to put a finger in the hole in her throat so she can actually say it. It's a fucking mess. It's a bizarre, bizarre mess that is never ending, seemingly. And that's where you think the movie's going to end. The father sacrifices himself. They won't have to worry about this for years. And now Katie is back and alive and well. How would Katie be alive and well? She didn't eat for 8 years. She didn't drink water for 8 years. She's been mummified for 8 years. How would she be alive and well after this whole thing transpired? But somehow she's alive. Maud is doing fine. We see all that. We see Sebastian's fine now. But the father's locked down in the basement. And obviously there's a scene. Let me just get this out the way because this movie's going through my head at 1,000 miles per hour at the moment. To start the movie, we get a scene between Katie and her father where she's like, hey, we need to learn this Morse code. I need to learn it. It's a throwaway scene that you think happened at the beginning, but then it gets brought back because Katie is talking through her Morse code while she's possessed, which doesn't make too much sense, but somehow the father picks up on it and he realizes that she's saying Lila, which leads him to discover how everything transpired. But nonetheless, we see it again at the end where the father's not possessed and he is communicating through Morse code. And there's a horrible scene where Larissa is talking to Katie while they're sitting by Charlie's coffin. And Larissa's like, what is he saying? And Katie's like, he's saying he loves us all. He misses you or some bullshit. It's like, what? That's what I wanted to say watching that. And by the way, I was probably a chore to sit next to during this movie. I was just laughing and just grunting and just I was doing that during the whole movie. God, that's what I was doing during this movie. There was a girl sitting in front of me that kept on turning her head. I was like, listen, I'm sorry. I pride myself on theater etiquette. Don't get me wrong, but this is a movie that elicits reaction from me that might disgust others. Now listen, if you don't like it, you don't like it. But I wasn't being too egregious with it. It was just the fact that she was right in front of me, so that's why she heard me so much. But that's not even where the movie ends. Sorry to keep on going, because I really said all I could have said about this movie, but we get a final scene where the magician that started this whole thing and that continued her family's tradition, she got shot by Dahlia, we saw in the middle of this movie. She's not actually dead. She's in prison. She's chained to the bed. And what do we get? We get to see Larissa, Detective Dahlia, and Charlie, who's now possessed, wheeled into her room. Now they're going to do the demonic transferring to the magician. And Charlie's going to be back being a dad and potentially being a journalist. First and foremost, how do you even explain any of this? How do you explain your mother dying, a.k.a. the kid's grandmother and Larissa's mom? How do we explain Charlie and where he's been, assuming for God knows how long? How do you explain Katie coming back since you were told you can't say anything about it? How does no one from the funeral say anything about what's transpired? About the two kids biting people, a demonic kid crawling from the ceiling. How does that get brushed under the rug? This movie was a mess. This movie was a mess. It was slop. It was slop. It was a big old pile of sloppy shit, and I had to watch it for 2 hours and 13 minutes. So, I mean this with no hyperbole. This is one of the worst movies I've seen in theaters in some time. I'm talking about, it was up there with, let me go and check some of my rankings of the past few years. Like, this is up there with Exorcist Believer, or whatever the fuck that movie is called. It's up there with this Robert Rodriguez movie that came out, I think, 2 to 3 years ago, that I saw on a Monday Mystery Movie Night. That was just egregious. What was the name of it? Hypnotic. This is up there with Hypnotic, Strays, Mafia Mama, You People, The Machine, Paint. I mean, it was that bad. Even like Fast 10, The Last Voyage of the Demeter, whatever the fuck that movie was. This movie was egregious. Egregious. One of the worst movies you will see in theaters. I implore you not to waste your time and go see this movie, because you will regret it. Lee Cronin's The Mummy is offensive, idiotic, stupid, void of fun, void of logic, and poorly acted, and really doesn't show any promise or any great filmmaking. If I had to rate Lee Cronin's The Mummy, I would give Lee Cronin's The Mummy a 1 out of 5. Now, luckily, it had good body horror. It had decent physical performance, specifically from Katie's character. And also, the premise is interesting for about 10 to 15 minutes, maybe even just 5 to 10 minutes. Everything else is horrible. The performances, the filmmaking, the logic, the plot, how this film ends, how this film wraps a bow on everything. This movie is bad. Really, 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 really bad. 1 out of 5, a 2 out of 10, a 20, a 15 to 20 out of 100. Just a bad, 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 bad movie. And here are a list of things I'd rather do than watch this movie again. I'd rather watch the Bills lose 4 Super Bowls over again. I'd rather bang my head against a wall. I'd rather box Mike Tyson. I'd rather get jumped by Mike Tyson, Tyson Fury, Anthony Joshua, Deontay Wilder. I'd rather get jumped by John Jones, Josh Hoykett, and a whole bunch of MMA fighters than watch this movie again. At least those things would teach me something. At least those things would somewhat entertain me just a little bit, even if it resulted in my pain. I will forget about this movie probably within the next 2 hours, but if I do remember, it's because it infuriated me. Lee Cronin's The Mummy, one of the worst movies you will see if you dare to see it. And Lee Cronin putting his name in this title is egregious by the second. Lee Cronin putting his name in this title is even more egregious by the second. Lee Cronin's The Mummy is a mess, and that's my review on Lee Cronin's The Mummy. Now, let me tell you guys what is in store for the next week for me. This was originally going to be a video where I reviewed 2 films, but Lee Cronin's The Mummy was so bad, I didn't want to go see another movie tonight, because if I did, I probably would have forgot about this movie. I think I'm probably going to see Normal, the new Bob Odenkirk movie, which really looks like Nobody. But then on Monday, I'm going to see one of my favorite movies of all time, Dazed and Confused. But hold on a second. Wow. You're seeing this in real time. They're doing 2 horror movies for Monday Mystery Movie Night on Monday. Choose Your Fate. Wow. That's interesting. I'm curious what that's going to be. Maybe I'd do that alongside Dazed and Confused. But this upcoming Friday, you guessed it, we have Michael Jackson's biopic coming out, which is going to be something else. I'll tell you that, because I have a feeling it's going to be bad, but also I'm a Michael Jackson guy. I love Michael Jackson. I am going to be there, and I will be reviewing this movie, so hopefully it's fun. Like, I'm a guy who liked the Elvis biopic with Austin Butler. I cried like a baby at the end of that movie, seeing Fat Elvis sing Unchained Melody. That was awesome. But even though I knew that movie was like kind of bad, I still enjoyed it. So hopefully Michael is the same to that. At least we got to see the talent of Javar Jackson on display. But outside of Michael, we also get like Mother Mary with Anne Hathaway coming out next week. And then we also get Over Your Dead Body with Jason Segel and Samara Weaving, which should be fun. And then the week after that, we get Deepwater, which is a shark movie. And then we also get like Hokum, which is a horror movie with Adam Scott, which is really interesting. I have to assume that's one of the Monday Mystery movies this upcoming week. So I have to assume Deepwater and Hokum are the 2 movies on Monday Mystery, which should be interesting. And then after that, we get Mortal Kombat 2, which is interesting. Interesting. Hey, it's your boy Matt Talks Films. I'm going to be doing a lot of this every week, even if it's a horrible movie like Lee Cronin's The Mummy. So, if you made it this far in the video, leave a like, comment, share, subscribe right here, right now, Matt Talks Films on YouTube. And follow me everywhere on Matt Talks Films, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter for more short-form content like this. I also have a sports page. I haven't uploaded a sports YouTube video in about 2 months. I watch a lot of the NBA. It's about to be NFL draft season in the next week or so. So expect a video on there. But also, I do like short-form content videos on my Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, etc. So follow me everywhere at Matt Talk Sports. But other than that, thanks for sticking around. Hopefully you checked out this whole video. Hopefully you clicked like. Hopefully you clicked share. Hopefully you clicked subscribe. And guess what? I'll see you on the flip side.